What's up, everybody? This is Chad Minton, your host of Catfish on Ice podcast. We missed an episode last week, so we are jumping in with a quick YouTube update for our channel. Appreciate you joining me. We will have a new episode later this week on Wednesday of this week, fully updating it with my co-host Rich Howe and Kyle Perkins. A lot has happened since our last episode of Catfish on Ice podcast, which is on the Hockey Podcast Network. And also, we are presented by DraftKings, our awesome sponsor. Promo code THPN when you sign up. All right, so a lot has happened, so I want to really get my thoughts out there ahead of our next episode, episode 138, later this week, which you need to make sure to check out. Follow us on Twitter at Catfish Ice to watch it live on Twitter this Wednesday, or also you can watch it on our YouTube channel. Just subscribe to the channel. You'll get updates with awesome videos like this and to watch full episodes. Okay, so it's all anyone can talk about across the NHL world. Matthew Tkachuk, where would he go? I never bought the Kool-Aid personally. I never thought he was going to come here. And I was starting to a little bit fall for it and think, because you were starting to read these reports about his list of teams, and all of these beat writers are doing their job and they're getting out there and they're writing these articles about where does Matthew Tkachuk want to go. It was the Matthew Tkachuk sweepstakes. And the Predators were one of those teams that were popping up as one of his possible list of teams that he would go to. And so naturally, we were all buying into the Kool-Aid. We were buying into the fairy tale of Matthew Tkachuk on this Predators team. And even I was starting to fall for it. But then we had to start thinking about what would the Predators have to give up to get him. Before I get into that, let's talk about it, the nuts and bolts of what happened with Matthew Tkachuk. He ends up going to the Florida Panthers for a massive trade haul in return to Calgary. So, yes, he's joining the Florida Panthers for Jonathan Huberdeau, another 100-point scorer, plus point scorer, a MVP caliber player. So a one-for-one swap, if you will. But not only did Calgary get Jonathan Huberdeau, but they also got Mackenzie Weegar, who is a very, very quality defenseman. Put up 44 points in 80 games last season. Very quality player. Got themselves a prospect and a draft pick as well. So I don't know. I don't know how you can say that the Florida Panthers won this trade just because they got themselves Matthew Tkachuk, who is undoubtedly a great generational type of player. No doubt about that. I was starting to think if he ends up on the Predators, should we start thinking about a Stanley Cup possibility? But I never bought into it. But when it comes to the Panthers, that's where Matthew Tkachuk's going right now. I'm sorry. I don't know if it makes them that much better. For what they gave up, they're kind of the same team to me. They really are. They're still a great team. They're a great regular season team. They'll win a lot of games. They'll pile up the points. Maybe they go to the second round or the Eastern Conference Finals. But am I going to put them as a Stanley Cup favorite? I got to see it to believe it. So when you put out a trade package like you just did to get Matthew Tkachuk, I think the Calgary Flames won this trade bar none. They really did. I mean, they've had a horrible offseason. I feel so bad for the Flames fans because the way Johnny Gaudreau did them is just, I mean, they've lost two of their most beloved players in the same offseason after a season where they were pegged by a lot of people, including myself, as a dark horse Stanley Cup contender. Things changed quickly obviously, with what's happened to the Flames, because it's been a really bad offseason for them. So I think this is the best you could have hoped for if you're a Flames fan, to get Jonathan Huberdeau, to get Mackenzie Weegar, who is a very quality defenseman, and you're not completely dead and out of the water with this trade. You can still compete next season. The Panthers, they'll be good. They will be. But I'm not saying they're a bad team just because they did this trade. But did it make them that much better? I don't see it. I'll have to see it to believe it, I guess. But when it comes back to the Predators, because they were rumored to possibly being in the running for Matthew Tkachuk, a lot of people were wanting Matthew Tkachuk. Look, if he would have been added to this team, instantly people outside of the Nashville media would have been thinking Stanley Cup possibilities. Because when you add a player like that, that's only natural. But let's think about what would have been given up and if it would have been worth it, especially looking at what the Florida Panthers gave up to get Matthew Tkachuk. It kind of comes down to it as the Predators were never really serious contenders to get him in the first place. And even David Poile admitted that after the fact. And so it kind of comes down to the fact that we were all getting overworked over this for nothing. But I will say, just hypothetically speaking, you would have had to have given up two very important prospects to get Tkachuk. Let's say the Panthers weren't involved, and let's say the Predators somehow were involved. You would have had to give up a very good offensive player. You don't have a player like Jonathan Huberdeau available, most likely, but could you have given up a Matt Duchene? Could you have given up? I think Philip Tomasino probably would have been in the fold if you were going to get him. Tomasino would have been someone the Flames would have been interested in. Dante Fabro is a player who's been thrown around as a trade piece all offseason. For the Flames to be interested in a trade package from the Preds, Tomasino would have had to be part of it. I don't think Eeli Tolvanen has enough trade value right now. I think another team would have had a better offer. So Tomasino, Matt Duchene, his contract is still very lengthy. Yes, he had a career year this past year, but I don't know what GMs think about that as far as moving forward, possibly. But again, how much better would you have come to let go of Matt Duchene to get a Matthew Tkachuk? It's hard to say. And then Dante Fabro would have been a nice trade piece to offer. Maybe the Flames would have been interested in that, and I would have been okay with that. But then I even saw Yaroslav Askarov being floated around and people saying, we're okay with UC Saros. He's still young. We can let go of Yaroslav Askarov. I got to jump off board with that one. I'm sorry. Goaltender is the hardest position to check off. You see teams out there today who cannot figure out the goalie position. The Edmonton Oilers are the most recent example. If they had themselves a nice quality goaltender like UC Saros, then they probably would have won a cup by now in recent times. So I don't like the idea of just throwing away goalie prospects, especially goalie prospects who are widely regarded as the top goalie prospect in the world. So I'm going to have to give you a hard no on that one. So as much as I like Matthew Tkachuk, I'm glad the Predators did not jump off the deep end to get him. It turns out they weren't really in the running to begin with, so that's okay. Let's move on to what really did happen and the reality of it. They get Nino Niederreiter for a much more team-friendly deal than what Matthew Tkachuk would have ever been. I know he's not on the same scale as Matthew Tkachuk. That's okay. Nino Niederreiter, called nickname, one of the best nicknames in sports, El Nino. So cool. Love that nickname. He is the perfect missing piece for this Predators team. He really is. He really does fit exactly what the Predators were missing last postseason. He really was. He forechecks hard. He's one of the best forechecking forwards out there. He's a veteran. He can still pot goals for you. 20-plus goal scorer. He's very capable of that. Let's think about Craig Smith, one of my favorite all-time Predators players. He was a bona fide, reliable 20-plus goal scorer. I think Nino Niederreiter can kind of fulfill that role and maybe even be better. But at the very least, he can fill in that role because the Predators should have never lost Craig Smith to begin with. I'm still bitter about that. So I like Nino Niederreiter. I love this addition. 2 years, $4 million. I mean, they use their cap space very, very well in this regard. And Nino Niederreiter hung around on the free agency market. He was a player I thought would have gone day one on free agency right when it opened. And he kept hanging around. We kept waiting for the Predators. We knew they had to have one more move up their sleeve. And it just comes out of nowhere. Nino Niederreiter signs with the Predators. It's a really great addition for them. I'm not saying it makes them a Stanley Cup contender and that they're going to bolt past the Colorado Avalanche in the Central Division. But what I am telling you is, realistically, they should be considered a top 3 team in this division. After what they did last season, and now they've already become a better team. They have upgraded. They've gotten better this offseason. There's no doubt about it. With Ryan McDonough joining the fold, they re-signed Philip Forsberg. They've got a lot of pieces coming back. No offense to Luke Cunnin, but he's gone. He was a big liability to this team. He's gone. They do have to figure out a couple more pieces in this lineup, especially in the depth. But they're on the right track. They should be able to be at the very least a top 3 team. You get in the playoffs, you avoid the wild card, and then you see if you can win a first-round series, and then who knows after that. All you got to do is go on a hot streak. We saw it in 2017. So I really like what they've done this offseason. I was buying the Kool-Aid on Matthew Tkachuk, but it's okay. They didn't get him. It's not the end of the world, especially when you see what Florida had to give up to get him. Yeah, thanks, but no thanks. It's okay. Nino Niederreiter is a great – I call it like this. Okay, baseball analogy here. If Matthew Tkachuk was a grand slam, then guess what Nino Niederreiter was? You hit a triple, you knocked in a few runs, and you're still moving around the bases. That's what Nino Niederreiter is. He's a great addition to this team. Thank you, everybody. This is a YouTube special here. We are going to do a full episode, talk fully about this later this week. Wednesday is a new episode of Catfish on Ice. Follow on Twitter at Catfish Ice. Also on Facebook and Instagram at Catfish Ice. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please leave a comment on the video. We really appreciate that as well. This is Chad Minton, your host. I'll be joined by Rich Howe and Kyle Perkins, my co-host, this Wednesday. We're doing a full episode. We got tons of great topics lined up for you. Get caught up on all of our past episodes on Spotify, Apple, all the major podcast platforms. Again, we're brought to you by DraftKings, promo code THPN when you sign up for exclusive offers. And we are part of the Hockey Podcast Network. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Stay tuned for a new episode later this week.